Hey, what's up guys? JB here. It's been a minute since I've made a video here on YouTube and I'm very excited to get back to it. But today is not going to be one of my character reviews. I wanted to tackle a different topic for today. And that's because today's topic is going to be all about helping you guys out there fight back against and deal with the current predominant meta team of today. And that de facto team is none other than Sephiroth, Shurecca, and Summer Resnick. Now looking at the pick rates over on WoTVstats.com, this is the most used team on both attack and defense in the top 100 at roughly a 30 to 40% or higher pick rate across players. And certainly as you go up the ladder towards the top 10 and top 5, those pick rates do get even higher. And to be honest, that really doesn't feel very good to kind of have those mirror matches, take on the meta with the meta, have that mirror match and just kind of hope that you have more reincarnations or just get better RNG in that match. There's not a ton of nuance to that. And frankly, for me, at least it's not really all that fun. And that fact is really kind of the main driver, behind my video here today. Now, there are many reasons why this particular meta team is so strong, and we're going to be breaking it down and deconstructing all of those ways here in today's video to truly understand what makes that team tick and kind of look at all of its various strengths and weaknesses. Now, no doubt this team can be very frustrating to deal with. It is the top team right now for a reason, but I'm here to say that I have cooked up a bunch of teams that we'll look at here today. We'll look at some strategies that you can deploy and maybe make this team a little bit easier to handle for you out there and maybe just have a little bit of more fun doing it. Now, this is a style of guide that I have done once before when Bridal Elia first came into the game about a year ago, but I am trying a new format here so that perhaps this can be something that I can help you guys out with on a more regular basis. So without further ado, let's get into it. And we're going to kick it off here with the strengths of this meta team and some tactics that you can use to mitigate those various strengths. Now, first and foremost, this team is all about status ailments. Top of the list is going to be Sephiroth with that oppressive curse on his limit burst. Now, curse is not the only ailment that you're going to have to worry about with this particular team. Depending on his build, Sephiroth will have access to sleep and berserk as well. Shurecca, on the other hand, she does carry up to a 50% chance to immobilize you, locking you in place, and as a result, you actually do less damage to her due to her honeycomb barrier effect. So you absolutely need to be accounting for those things within your trust stones. That is going to be step one here today. And personally, I do cover all 4 of those main status ailments, and I pair that along with HP and luck stones. Now, unfortunately, just a trust stone is not going to be enough to make you immune to either curse or immobilize in this case. So you are able to bring in an Esper to stack along with those trust stones. As of now, Orochi is the only one available with curse resistance. On the other hand, there are several Espers, which I'll show here at the bottom of the page, which can help you out in terms of immobilize and get you up to that 50% chance stacked with a trust stone. And that's going to be Master Curl, Bahamut, and Siren. Now, do remember that auras and TMRs, party buffs, can also help you out in this regard as well. Summer Resnick, of course, I think is the main one that comes to mind specifically for that curse resistance. Now, last but not least, you do have the option of reducing your faith in the barracks and kind of further reducing the chance that you'll catch one of those status ailments. The breakpoints that I usually try to go for are either going to be 50 or 30, and that all depends on the buffs that I'm trying to use, as some of them do require a minimum of 50 faith. Now, a second massive strength of this team is the support of Resnick, not only with that anti-curse aura that we mentioned, but of course her buffs and healing that she brings to the fight. And I would say specifically the anti-barrier break seal that she brings, with both Sephiroth and Shurecca bringing their own barriers into the fight, that she's able to help protect those. And then of course she does supply the mid-fight barriers with her heal on top of that. Now Shurecca, on the other hand, she does also have a very important seal, and that's going to be blocking your ability to dispel the team, which just gives this team, more ample ability to use various buffs and TMRs, have those protected, and gain extra mitigation or damage as a result. Now, unfortunately, there's really no way around either of those seals from Resnick or from Shurecca, unless of course you are able to hit them first and maybe get some of those key dispels or barrier breaks off early in the fight before they can actually apply that onto you. And that's definitely a very viable strategy, in terms of your agility tuning or how you actually do your movements. We have been seeing more and more that the first team to actually hit in the fight and get off those key seals is the team that generally ends up winning a lot of these fights. Now, point 3 here is going to be one of the most powerful aspects of this team, and that is going to be their ability to dispel the things that you are carrying into the fight. Sephiroth, of course, has that very powerful general dispel on hit. And currently the best way to deal with that is to kind of seal off his ability to do that. And of course, that's going to be Shrek, like we just talked about. However, there is going to be a new unit, Exia, that will be coming in the short future that also has the ability to seal off General Dispel. Another sneaky option here is going to be Alaya the Alabaster, who just recently got a Limit Burst upgrade, which does bring this same utility and could potentially help you out there. Now, if you aren't bringing in one of those characters, I think it's important not to have your team rely so much on those standard buffs or haste, which are so easily dispelled, because in many cases they are just going to be washed away and you're going to get little benefit out of them in the fight. So you can look to units which have a strong effective HP and a lot of innate bulk that they can carry into the battle so that it doesn't end up hurting them too badly if they do get dispelled early on. Now, of course, this team does have many other strengths. I've summarized, several of them here in this last point. Of course, these units are extremely accurate, so evasion is not really going to work against them in the majority of cases. You do have Shrek's follow-up damage that is also a major factor that you'll need to worry about. Still to this day, not a ton of ways to deal with that, although there are a few, including Resnick herself. Now, Lightning Veritas is going to be another option in that regard. However, most of us, I think, out there are still going to be building her up here for quite a while. Now, from a damage perspective, this is a team that sort of barrages you not only with strong area of effect damage from Sephiroth, but of course that strong unit damage coming there from Shrek on top of it. And of course, Sephiroth is bringing in that re-raise capability on his main party buff, so very, very important to have a removal for that so that you can take him down as quickly as possible, and there are a host of units that are able to do that in the game today. So that is a mouthful there, guys. Of course, there are nuances to this team which I didn't specifically talk about here, but I think I did cover the vast majority and the broad strokes of what makes this team so good here and some of the main things that you do need to worry about and actually some strategies that you can use up against those particular strengths. So what about the other side of the coin? What are going to be the holes in this team that we can poke, some areas that they are a bit weaker in that we can take advantage of? Spoiler alert, there actually aren't a ton, but there are some key ones that we'll look at here today. And as I was just mentioning, this team is capable of putting up some insane damage numbers. So we're going to start here on the defensive side. And what are some ways that we can actually mitigate that strong damage that they're bringing? Now, defensively, for any team that you're going to be putting up against the meta, it's important to know that this team is not able to remove either Protect or Shell, which are 25% flat reductions in damage to their respective types. Now, there are a number of TMRs and party buffs that exist in the game that can provide those effects for you, most recently on Shrek or Resnick's TMRs. On that same note, this team also doesn't have any way to dispel the new style of damage reduction buffs that have been implemented on units like Joom or the new Ramada, which have the magical version of that, or Cloud and Gilgamesh, which have the physical version, also providing a 25% reduction to their respective types. I call these Protect and Shell 2.0. That is also the same buffs that do come along the various tank auras out there, like Summer Glassy, Aldoa, and Dario as well. Now, another area where this team tends to struggle a little bit is with barriers. So that is another layer of mitigation that we can potentially work into our team, or units that we can look at that can maybe take advantage. Sephiroth, of course, he's not able to remove any kind of barrier. Now, Shrek, on the other hand, she is able to remove magic barriers on her limit burst. In many cases, though, that's going to be her only way to do that, depending on how she is set up. So that means that if you have a way to get a mid-fight barrier going, like Summer Resnick provides, that can be a potential way that you can snowball the fights, and that does also go for the honeycomb barrier effect, which more units are getting these days and is also on Gilgamesh's TMR. Now, if your team does have Dispel Sealing available on a unit like Shrek or Alaya or Exia in the future, that is going to open up additional doors for you in terms of, other buffs that you can potentially bring into the fight and sort of get some additional power. Things like elemental resistance buffs, area or unit resistance, even haste to maybe take advantage of the turn order as well. So from the defensive standpoint, I think that's going to cover, most of the things that we want to look at. On the other side of the ball, offensively, what are we able to take advantage of and exploit some of those weaknesses that I have listed here in the bullet points? Well, first and foremost, this team is generally run at a high faith of 97 across all three units, meaning that they will take additional bonus damage from magic damage dealers, and as a result are actually going to be more susceptible to ailments themselves. And with this particular team that we're looking at here being the predominant meta team of the moment, if you're running that team, you also have to be worried about that mirror match. You have to be worried about all of those status ailments that we did look at early on in the video. So there's absolutely no way that they can cover the, bevy of status ailments that are out there. So things like stop or disable, charm, you may be able to use that effectively against this team and take advantage of that fact. Now, elementally, this team is going to be composed of 2 fire units and a wind unit, meaning that strong water damage, could potentially be one of the better plays to use against them. Now, ice can certainly be, part of that equation as well. It just might be a little bit of an uphill battle here with those 2 strong fire units. Now, you could also look at units who could debuff, some of their power. I think attacking the various damage penetrations is one of the better ways. That can sometimes be a little bit hit or miss though, just because Resnick does carry the ability to cleanse those debuffs there in the mid-fight with her limit burst. Now, my last point here is going to be going back to Espers again. Personally, 2 of my favorites are going to be Ultros and Dark Siren, where I can pick up the natural 10% fire resistance to kind of help mitigate what Sephiroth is doing, but then I'm able to spec them into very high magic resistance and then the unit resistance as well to help mitigate what Shrek is bringing to the fight. So I think those are a couple of the strongest choices, although there are, a couple of other nice options out there like Voldisk and Dark Bahamut. All right, guys, so we fully broke it down there offensively and defensively for this team of Sephiroth, Shrek, and Resnick. And with those things fresh in our mind, what are going to be some of the best teams and units that we can actually take advantage of some of those various factors that we looked at? And just to kind of preface this here before we go into the teams, I have tried to avoid as much as I could using Resnick and Shrek themselves here, although I do have a couple of examples of them, and I do have them here as alternates that you could fill in for those slots in your team. Now, as of right now, I think some of the best jobs that we have in the game, sort of anti-magic that are sort of just generally bulky bruisers, are going to be Greatsword, Spear, and Katana. So that is going to be especially important, I think, against this mixed damage team of Shrek and Sephiroth. I do think that Crystalborn Dario is going to be a potentially important factor here over the next couple of months as we kind of get further and further into this magic tinged meta, finally kind of cashing in on some of that initial promise that we knew he had as a unit. Now, you will notice some alternate units here on the various teams, like I mentioned. To be honest, it's really hard not to use Summer Resnick at the moment. She is that good, but if you do have her, I think she can fill in any of these support roles and probably be the best option there for you, at least right now. Like I said, though, I did want to sort of lean against using her where I could, because I know that many of you out there may not have her, and certainly if you did opt for Fina instead, I think that she can definitely be a competitive support unit right now too, and we'll see that here in the showcase shortly. Now, all of the teams that I've shown here, I have built and tested myself thoroughly. If they are set up properly, these teams can absolutely do work. There are several mono element teams here as well, which some of you may be surprised to see, but they are holding up, very, very well in my tests. Can you sort of just throw these teams out there and have it be a face roll, no-brainer kind of thing where you just kind of slot them in and then win every time? Absolutely not. That is definitely not the case. This team wouldn't be the meta team, if that were possible. But with the inherent strengths of the units in these various compositions, combined with using some of the strategies and mitigation techniques that we talked about, maybe even some fine-tuning and tinkering with those teams, I think that's going to be a recipe for success. Now, just as one final note here, these builds you'll see are going to be utilizing the very best in equipment and vision cards that are in the game today. But on the other side of the coin, I am going to be putting it up against the best possible on the other side as well, just as sort of a real stress test about what is possible. You may not have all of the things that I show here, and to be honest, that's okay because, your opponents that you're up against, they may not have the very best of the best either. So, do the best you can there, in terms of filling in those various vision cards or equipment slots. Use these ideas as more of a blueprint rather than a paint by numbers kind of strategy. The other thing you definitely need to take into account is reincarnation levels. It is 100% a big factor in the game today. At this point, you can't reasonably, expect to put up a non-invested team against a fully maxed out team and expect to win in most cases. That sort of is what it is. I don't have any magic wand for that. That is just a fact of life in the game today, but just something I wanted to mention. You do need to keep it in mind. So with that said, guys, here is the showcase where you can see these teams and what they're able to do. So there it is, guys. That is Crash the Meta Volume 1. And I say Volume 1 because that all depends on you guys out there. Sound off. Let me know what you guys think of this format down in the comments below. It was a ton of work for me to put all this together. And at the end of the day, if it's not as helpful as I want it to be, I want to know about it. I want to know how I can make it better for you guys for the next big meta team that we try to tackle in the future. Now, if you did enjoy the video today and did find it helpful, while you're down there in the comments, hit that like button for me. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.